Tech.AD here in Detroit. My name is Maria and I'm standing here with Sven. Hello and thank you for taking this time.
Sure, pleasure.
My pleasure as well. Could you briefly introduce yourself and the work you're doing at the Stanford University?
Sure, happy to. Sven Beiker, I'm a lecturer at the Stanford Business School. So I teach MBA students strategy making in the evolving automotive industry, which basically is to figure out autonomous, connected, electric, and shared mobility, and what newcomers can do to get into this space, and what incumbents can do to remain relevant, which is also what I do as my other job, which is running my consulting firm, Silicon Valley Mobility, where I do this on a, let's say, less educating, more consulting level.
So what can I do as an MBA student to really get into this industry? What should I learn? What skills do I have? Need to have.
Well, let's put it this way. I think this industry needs everything, quite frankly. I mean, definitely needs engineering competence, definitely needs strategic thinking, what I teach. Certainly needs policies and legal matters, human factors, absolutely yes. Environmental concerns, city policies and such. And that's really because what we are about here is not just build car 2.0. We are reinventing mobility, and that's everything.
This is what we heard a lot about today, reinventing mobility. What will it stand for? What can we expect of this mobility of the future?
Well, let's see. I mean, it used to be that us humans, consumers, get in our cars and drive to work, to school, go shopping, vacation, whatever. And now it really becomes, for one, and that's obviously the theme of that conference, automotive tech, automated driving, that cars will drive us. And that will have huge implications on all these other sectors as well. And so therefore, it's not just like there's a new car, go and have fun with it. It's really the infrastructure requirements, the whole network of vehicles and such, and that you cannot build overnight. I mean, that really is a transition. I don't think the 20 years are enough as a transition. That's a pretty long-term transition. Maybe by 2050 we will be mostly done with it, but we'll see.
We will see.
We'll see.
And in your talk or your morning session today, you talked about the next stage of deployment scenarios. Can you share a bit of that, of insights with us?
Yeah, sure, happy to. I started with parts of this talk, so the deployment side of things. I also talked about the business models. But the deployment scenarios, because I got upset.
You got upset?
I got totally upset because people called me anything in between a hopeless pessimist and a naive optimist.
Okay.
When I talked about what and when automated driving might be like, I said, that's unfair. I'm not a naive optimist or a hopeless pessimist. I'm probably somewhat in between, which is what everybody claims, I guess. No, but truth be told, there's so many different, let's say, colors of autonomous or automated vehicles. And that's what basically the first takeaway of my talk. Don't just talk about autonomous vehicles. There's many more. There's like the shuttles and delivery vehicles and trucks and, yes, passenger vehicles that we might own at some point as well. But once looking at it, you basically see there's some staging, and it's starting basically now with shuttle vehicles and the likes. And in the end, and that might be 2050, who knows, we might own some of these vehicles if ownership then is still something that we will do. Who knows?
Who knows? And what specific challenges lie ahead of us in terms of passenger? You talked about this, public service, commercial adoption. So how can we get people, if the industry is not thinking we can do it in 2025, how can we get people to really think about autonomous driving in, hopefully, 2005?
Well, let's see. Assuming things work, right? And that's a pretty big assumption, but at some point it will work. As it stands right now, that about 3/4 of consumers, that's in the US and actually somewhat similar in Europe, other countries like China are a little bit different, but 3 out of 4 consumers are concerned about this technology, and they say, I would feel uncomfortable. And that's where we need to explain what are we talking about. And this starts with how we call and brand and label these systems that we have out today, where we actually explain consumers, this is what it is and this is what it isn't, and this is what you, consumers, still need to do. So it starts with this. And then probably the road infrastructure and the way how we design roads today and how we use roads don't work perfectly well for self-driving cars. So we need to work on this as well. Well, because what we've been discussing actually here throughout the day, like starts with lane markings.
Okay.
These lane markings are really important to these automated vehicles, that cameras actually know where the lanes are, right? And then you can basically take this into road signs that you can actually really clearly read a stop sign. I mean, yes, most of the time you can do it, but a camera-based system looks at things literally a different way. So we need something like this. And then also what we need to look at, that's what I often say, well, we work on making mobility easier to use, probably less expensive, and ubiquitously available. We will probably use it more and more and more and more. So we might end up with even more vehicles on the road, and that's what we need to account for as well.
Okay, because we had this also in one of the interviews today, that it could also get worse on the streets, but do we have traffic jams then, because the cars are connected and talking to each other? Would we have traffic jams, or would it just be more more cars on the road?
Yeah. Well, let's see. In an ideal world, you could have all these cars and they all run at an optimal speed and very tightly together and all of that. You have an optimal throughput, where some people estimate even at gridlock, so full congestion during peak hour traffic, that we are only using 30% or so of the road surface. So where you can say, well, we still got 70% potential, but that's really everything being perfect.
Okay.
But it's still something as what? I mean, the car that you might be purchasing today in 2018, you will still be driving it in 2030 and maybe 2035, because then it will only be, 17 years old. So the mix of different vehicles and traffic patterns, that will cause literally hiccups. Okay. And the whole system might be choking on it. Yeah. So yeah, we will still have traffic jams, I'm afraid to say so.
Ah, that's bad. But
it is, but we're working on it.
Thank you for that. So what role does a driver play in this? Will we still be driving like in 20 years, like manually?
In 20 years, I think so. Okay. And I know that not everybody agrees with me, but 20 years.
Let's make it 40.
Well, 40, that's different, right? I mean, around that time, many things can happen. And so I think it's, let's say in 20 years, because you brought it up, there will be quite a few driverless vehicles around. I think certainly in cities, maybe on long-haul trucks on the highway, and maybe special lanes or some sort of, where there might not be drivers anymore. But I think in 20 years from now, we might be really in the midst of the transition, which means driverless vehicles and human-driven vehicles in the same spot, which will make for pretty interesting mix.
I think so too.
It will.
And last question, what is your personal wish for autonomous driving? So just your wish.
Personal, now you got me. Yeah. Never thought about me personally. I'm always so altruistic. Oh, what do you mean about me? Let's see, I would wish that, let me first tell you what I really like, or what I would have said like 3 years ago and what I like to see now. What I really like now is there's more and more collaboration in industry, and that's between like the tech industry and startups and the traditional automotive industry. And me being in Silicon Valley, I can tell that was not always the case, but it's moving closer together, and maybe I'd like to see even more of that. So that's good. Other than that, my wish is that with this new mobility paradigm, that we not just focusing on autonomous driving, but also on sustainability of transportation, because actually transportation is causing many problems on the planet, that we address this as well, and that we figure that out, but still leave the fun part in it, because I still like driving. This
would be the next question. Will there still be fun in driving?
I think so. And look, some people say you need to go to a racetrack with your 2018 vehicle to have fun, maybe. But I think even a self-driving car can be fun. If you think about a roller coaster, right? A roller coaster, I think, is like the perfect autonomous car, right? I mean, you don't have any steering wheel, you cannot really take control. But people go there for fun, right? And it will be a different kind of fun. And the fun actually might be that you are in your virtual world within this mobility pod or whatever. So maybe one of these paradigms holds true here as well, where riding a horse used to be fun, and had you asked people at the transition towards like automobiles, will it still be fun in riding a horse? Well, now we got different fun driving a car, so I'm not concerned about fun.
Wonderful.
Good.
Thank you very much for
You're
this
welcome.
short talk, and enjoy the rest of the
Will do.
conference.
Thanks so much.